My name's Hema Patel, and I live in Southern California. And I have two sons, and one of them is a 30-year-old, and he has cystic fibrosis. And I have a 28-year-old son that does not have cystic fibrosis. He's also not a carrier of the gene.
Hello, my name is Alicia. My husband Peter and I are from Mexico, and we've lived in the United States most of our life. We live in Southern California with our two young adult sons. Our youngest, Mark Anthony, is 19 years old and has cystic fibrosis.
My name is Jalen Cooper. I'm from Little Rock, Arkansas, and I'm 25 years old and I have CF.
Hi, my name is Diana Lee Mathis, and I am from North Little Rock, Arkansas, and I am Jalen's mother and advocate.
My name is Isabel Yuriko Stenzo Burns. I have cystic fibrosis. I'm 49 years old and I have had a double lung transplant for 17 years. My mother is from Japan and my father is from Germany.
Hi, my name is Terry Wright. I am 59 years of age. I live in Arkansas, North Little Rock, Arkansas. I have cystic fibrosis. I'm married to this beautiful young lady named Michelle Wright.
Hi everyone, my name is Harini. I come from the southern part of India. I have two sons, Shrivas and Abhijit, and they both have cystic fibrosis.
I'm Jeannie Hanley, and I am from Los Angeles. I have cystic fibrosis, and I also have three siblings with cystic fibrosis, two of my three sisters and one of my five brothers.
I'm Everett Rice, and I live in Rosedale, California, which is about 20 miles northeast Sacramento. And I'm originally from the Bay Area, the San Francisco Bay Area, and I lived there for the first 19 years of my life. And I live with cystic fibrosis.
Hi, my name is Malving, and I am from St. Paul, Minnesota. I was diagnosed with CF when I was a little kid, and I am currently 34 years old.
Hi, my name is Rohini McKee, and I live in Menlo Park, California. We have one daughter named Rhea Louise McKee, and she's 5 years old and was born with cystic fibrosis.
Hi, my name is Hyson Chung. I'm 44 years old. I was born and raised in Hawaii, but I currently live in the beautiful hill country of South Central Texas, and I do have CF.
My name is Marianela Gonzalez Fajardo, and I'm from San Jose, California, and two of my kids had CF. My daughter Maria was 15 when she passed away of cystic fibrosis. She did have a double lung transplant in 2012. My son Francisco is 18-year-old now and is still battling CF.
Around the age of 4 or 5, I was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis. Prior to that, I remember going into the hospital, also to a lot of doctor's visits, and I do remember, coughing up mucus or just feeling short of breath. But I just thought it was normal because that's what I remember sort of growing up with. And I know at that time, prior to being diagnosed with CF, I was actually diagnosed with ciliary dyskinesia.
I kind of stayed sick all the time growing up. As an infant, in and out the hospital, counseling, stomach pain, severe stomach pain, abdominal pain, just very severe burning and throbbing in my dominant area.
My diagnosis was rather different. I was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis at age 34 while on active duty in the Marine Corps. I was trying and failing to have kids at the time, and diagnosing that issue is what led to discovering CF.
I was diagnosed in my early 30s, as were my three siblings. It wasn't until I became a doctor and was able to find resources and understand more about the disease that I was able to get us all diagnosed. Back then, we didn't have the benefit of newborn screening. And I don't know that we would have been diagnosed because in the Hispanic community, there are rarer mutations. And I don't know if our rare mutation would have been picked up by newborn screening.
My oldest son, he was diagnosed at the age of 14. He, as a child, as a baby, he was quite sick. He used to get coughs and colds, and we attributed that to him being in day nursery. But there was not really anything indicating any tests. I had no clue about cystic fibrosis, so I was not one to ask the doctors. And they did not know themselves, I'm assuming, because nothing was ever talked about.
Certain experiences, like dealing with kids who are normal, didn't really start to bother me until I started going to school. And for the most part, I was a pretty energetic kid. It was just until once it was time for me to go into the hospital because I was having a flare-up or an exacerbation that reality set in, like, oh, I have this, and just dealing with certain emotions about it. And it wasn't until really those times where I felt like that I was different.
I was diagnosed from birth with chronic bronchiolitic asthmatic. So I've always been doing treatments. I've always been on inhalers. I've always had lung issues. And I was spending like every week in allergy clinic just trying to find out what was getting me sick.
So my daughter was born November 19th, 2000. And at birth, I knew that she was sick. We just could not figure out what it was. At 4 months of age, she had a sweat test, which determined she had cystic fibrosis. Francisco was born May 15, 2003, and because he already had a sibling with CF, they decided at 4 months to test him as well, and he was also diagnosed with cystic fibrosis.
I guess the long story short part of it is I am blessed to have a twin brother who does not have cystic fibrosis. And if you look at me, I look really I look like the average size adult or male. And so that I think that's part of what created some confusion when I was a kid, because my size was typical. I wasn't perceived as stunted. And it was actually the fact that I had a twin brother who was twice my size that the doctor who actually ended up diagnosing me was going, wait, his brother is twice his size and he's having absorption problems and he's having other digestive problems and he has major lung infections. And that my doctor at the time, who was calling all over the world trying to figure out what was wrong with me, talked to this doctor. Actually, she was talking to somebody else and he overheard her. And while I was sitting in the allergy clinic and this weird doctor walks in, looks at my hand, and the next thing I know, I'm going to get a sweat test. And so within 2 weeks, I was diagnosed.
It was just terrified and terrible. I used to just wish that I would just die. That's how I was really feeling in my heart, because the pain was so severe. And the more I think about it, I get a little emotional about it, because there's some stuff in me, I guess probably every cystic fibrosis patient, that they harvesting, and just need to be treated. They need to come out and deal with it.
And what makes it so complicated is that the classic signs were always there. And to go 54 years and not be diagnosed simply because of one's race and ethnicity is devastating.
Prior to Ria's diagnosis with cystic fibrosis, I really only knew some of those horror stories that the media shares, but I knew nothing about it. As an Indian, I did not know anyone with cystic fibrosis. I talked to my family, my parents, my aunts, uncles, and no one knew anyone in the family who had cystic fibrosis or was diagnosed with anything similar to cystic fibrosis, and it was a complete shock to everyone.
Prior to the diagnosis, I didn't know about CF. However, upon learning more and talking to family members, I realized that 4 family members in Mexico died from CF, though at the time of their death, no one knew what it was that caused them to die.
When I was 11 years old, I started to go to cystic fibrosis summer camp back when they were open. And at that time, I was the only Asian person with my sister. There were just a handful of other people of Latinx origin.
Before my son got diagnosed, I was absolutely not familiar with the medical condition called cystic fibrosis, and I don't know anyone in the family who's been diagnosed with it. All I've heard is pretty much asthma. That's the only thing that's kind of prevalent in my family. So cystic fibrosis is, I got kind of introduced to that, when my son got diagnosed with it.
I haven't met many others in the East Asian community that have CF. I think actually Isa and Anna are the only ones that I've met. I met them during a CF conference in Hawaii where I was stationed at the time in the military. And then we also attended Great Strides together that week.
The emotional challenges are trying to befriend my body that has constantly interrupted and interfered with the things that I wish I could do or want to do. As a child, CF was a major influence in my family. The time commitment of treatments was extensive. The need for access to medical care was extremely important for my father's employment. In fact, it actually influenced my mom to become a respiratory therapist and then later a pediatric social worker. So CF was obviously not just something that affected my sister and I, but affected my entire family.
I used to resent, as a child, growing up with CF, watching all these medical people coming in and looking at me like I was an anomaly. It was like, you have CF? How did that happen? And these are medical students. So the hospital I grew up in was a nursing hospital, a nursing teaching hospital, and a medical teaching hospital. So I spent years in the hospital dealing with people who just never seen a Black person with CF.
I was having symptoms. I forget exactly, but I went into the emergency room and I needed I called the doctor and they said, go into the ER. And when I went in there, I had mentioned, by the way, I have cystic fibrosis. This is my care team. This is the information. And the care provider was like, no, you don't. You have asthma. And I was stunned and I corrected her and I said, no, I have cystic fibrosis. And she goes, no, you don't. You have asthma. And I was like, wait, why am I arguing with you? I know I have CF,
One of the things that I found out after my son's diagnosis is what the information available to me online and in anything that I read indicated that cystic fibrosis was something that happened with children of European descent, which was one of the reasons I made them test him several times, because I did not believe that this could happen to me or to him.
I think the East Asian population is often the forgotten minority in the United States, and that can be even more emphasized in the CF community because it is so incredibly rare. So I think it's important in particular for healthcare providers and the CF community to welcome and elicit the involvement and encourage the advocacy for the East Asian community.
Considering just the history of African Americans, we're often overlooked anyway. And then sometimes just depending on how some people who come from African American communities were raised, or they may not have enough resources, they may not even know how to advocate for themselves. So that's why I think it's so important to have research and have resources out there, so that way to be able to have it there, so that way for the people who may not know that it's there and they won't be missed.
The answers that I found realizing that I have CF after my diagnosis was so eye-opening. It helped me put all those different puzzle pieces together and things started to make sense. And so I think there's probably a lot of other Asians out there that have these issues and don't know how to put those puzzle pieces together yet. And by raising the awareness of CF in those communities, they can get diagnosed and they can start getting some explanations as well and have better ways to treat their health issues, like I found.
I do believe that there are those in the Hispanic community who will be diagnosed late or who have not been diagnosed yet due to the misperception of CF being a disease of European descent and of childhood.
I have to believe that there are more people of Indian descent that have cystic fibrosis than they realize. I don't think it's commonly assumed to be in our population and often misdiagnosed for other pulmonary diseases perhaps, or just overlooked and just thought to be something specific to this child, but not actually given the diagnosis of cystic fibrosis. And I'm interested to see, as diagnostic opportunities improve in India, if we do see more cases of cystic fibrosis amongst this community.
I do believe that there are some families, especially in the Latino community, that has been misdiagnosed or not even tested properly because they believe that CF is only a Caucasian disease, and it has affected the Latino community very, very hard.
I think that for people who have CF, and especially more for people who are a minority with CF, just what I do, I take things day by day and do the best that you can. And then at times when you feel that you're at your optimal health, to do anything that you want to do and take that opportunity if you have it. So, and don't let anybody say that you can't do it.
We can't go back in time and take back the pain and the suffering, but we can do our part to make sure that we are educating others and helping them understand not only the short-term impact of health disparities, but the long-term impact.
I think health decisions are some of the most important decisions that we have in our lives. We often overlook those. You can't be a passive participant in your health. You have to take control of it. Everyone has their own health issues, whether you have CF or something else. Everyone's got their issues. So especially in this pandemic that we're currently in, you need to seek answers from doctors and healthcare professionals that you trust and use their advice to live the best life you can.
So I'm gonna leave you with this, is the sooner you get your child diagnosed, will be a much better outcome, because he will start all therapy and any kind of care that he will need for his journey with cystic fibrosis.
So we want to make sure the healthcare community is doing what they need to just do their job, diagnose based on the signs and symptoms and not based on the color of somebody's skin.
I am very fortunate that my German father passed down a Delta F508 gene, and so I could benefit from Trikafta if I wasn't transplanted. But my mother's gene is very unusual. It's extraordinarily rare. So I know I represent a number of people with cystic fibrosis who do not have access to modifier drugs yet. And I hope that CF research and CF fundraising can continue to be strong and robust in order to raise money to find the modifiers that will help all people with CF, not just the majority, because these are the people that sometimes even struggle the most with access, with late diagnosis, with socioeconomic challenges. So they need to have the hope. It is so important for us as people with CF to have hope that someone out there has our back and is fighting for our genes and our mutations so that we can live the best life we can live.
So let me just give you this last thought, and it's mainly because living with cystic fibrosis my entire life, the one thing that gets in the way of you really living a full life is when you start living and being defined by your CF or any health condition you have. You are not your diagnosis. That is a real big issue. Quickly, when you have CF, everyone wants to talk about that, but you are so much more than that. And so if I can say anything, well, I'm going to encourage you, hey, go get tested, go go to the doctor, do all the things you have to do to make sure you're healthy. Just make sure you understand one thing: your CF is not you. You are who you are, and CF is a part of who you are. Don't ever let that or let somebody else define you as just being a CF patient, because you're so much more than that.